so we have figures like Karanawi in the 19th century, Rashid Rida in the early 20th century, and then we have a figure like Ahmed Deedat, South African, I think of South Asian origin or ancestry, but South African, who in the late 20th century becomes just a global phenom of dawa. Now,
through the audio cassette.
okay, yeah, back to the cassette. I mean, Ahmed Deedat, as far as I know, and folks might want to comment, on the page here of Exploring the Quran and the Bible, but I think he's extremely well known, even in non-English languages. A lot of his material was translated. I mean, I remember lots of people in the Middle East speaking to me about Ahmed Deedat because they had seen his stuff translated into Arabic. I think most of what he did was in English. But I mean, he's just a huge star. Even today on YouTube, everyone posts his videos, his debates, things like that. So what's the magic behind Ahmed Deedat's style?
Deedat is interesting because he's also emerging from the experience of being a Muslim minority. I mean, the Muslim minority in South Africa, where his native country, Deedat is of Indian descent, but South African, and he's very aggravated by what he sees as the very aggressive activities of South Africa's Christians trying to convert South Africa's Muslims.
Yeah, one of his books that you mentioned in your book is something like Combat Kit Against Bible Thumpers or something like that.
Exactly, Combat Kit Against Bible Thumpers, and it's a step by. You talk about dawa manuals. It's a step-by-step approach to how to silence these. And to be fair, he's sometimes even talking about Jehovah's Witnesses as an example of Christian mission, which would be debated among some whether that's an example of Christian mission or something else. But anyway, he's a step-by-step guide for how to answer these obnoxious Christian missionaries when they come knocking at your door. And so this kind of becomes his life passion. And part of the story, which is really fascinating too, is he develops this life passion when he happens upon Kadernawi. Kadernawi keeps coming up here.
Yeah, so
he happens upon a copy of Kadernawi's book, and he's like, here's an example of someone in the previous century, the 19th century, who was facing a similar onslaught against Islam and developed an effective response. And that I'm called to do that in my generation. I'm called to be maybe the Kadernawi of my generation. And so, but Kadernawi didn't have available to him was audio cassettes or television or video cassettes, or the jet airplane. And Deedat makes use of all these modalities to fly around the world debating prominent Christians. He famously debated the Pentecostal evangelist Jimmy Swaggart in Louisiana in the 1980s.
Yes, I've seen some of that. Yeah.
Yep. He develops a whole range of books. His audio cassettes kind of go viral as audio. There's no going viral in that time, but as well as they
much as it could. Yeah.
Right. And so he basically presents himself as a scholar of comparative religion. And here comes that interreligious piece again. He says, I'm not an ulama. And this is another thing we could talk about, like the whole, how democratization, how someone like Deedat, who's not an ulama, didn't go to madrasa,
traditionally trained,
becomes a global spokesperson for Islam, very popular. He says, my job is simply to defend Islam in this religious marketplace of the global religious marketplace. His tapes become popular right across the Muslim world. One person who was exposed to his tapes in Mumbai is none other than Zakir Naik. So Zakir Naik hears these tapes. A flame is lit in his heart. He's training to be a medical doctor. Again, not an alim, doesn't go to madrasa, doesn't have traditional training in Quran, fiqh, hadith, all that. He kind of becomes the heir apparent to Deedat. In Islamic history, people talk about a silsila, or a chain of authorization to speak for Islam, whether it's the Sufi tradition or among the ulama. It's a kind of extremely modern dawa silsila. Kadernawi, then Deedat, then Naik. As a really interesting example, and each of them using the new technologies available to them. Kadernawi used the printing press and the steamship. Deedat uses cassette tapes and the jet airplane and the microphone. Now,
Zakir starts his own TV channel, right?
Naik has been able to found a satellite TV channel, Peace TV. He's also using the airplane, of course, but he's using the internet, social media. So you see the technological progression through this silsila. And this is one I focus on, but the book also talks about, the rise of Egyptian televangelist Amr Khalid. There's all kinds of Turkish examples.
Which mostly he does the stuff in Arabic, right?
Right. Right.
Now, but just a second on, spend one more second on Ahmed Deedat and Zakir Naik. I mean, you show, I think, convincingly that they're connected, that Zakir Naik saw Ahmed Deedat as sort of a mentor and inspiration. But I mean, their styles are very different, and anyone can take a look and get to know their styles. But Ahmed Deedat, I mean, is just sort of a magical orator, very, I mean, sometimes he's not always friendly, even though we read the Quranic verse about debating billati hiya ahsan, in the kindest or gentlest way. He's not always kind or gentle. He can be very aggressive, both just in his talks or in his debates. But I mean, his mastery of oratory is undeniable, I think. Doesn't Zakir Naik, so maybe you want to contest that or nuance that, but doesn't Zakir Naik just have a fundamentally different vibe? I mean, like the vibe he gives off, whether or not you find it convincing, is like, I'm a master of information. I am a walking computer, and I'm going to give you a verse. I'm going to memorize the verses from both Quran or Hadith, or verses from the Bible. I'm going to maybe with something we could speak about too, like give you scientific information that validates the Quran and Islam. So it's just a different style, it seems to me.
No, that's such a great description. I sort of wish I had thought of that when I was writing the book. Yeah, I mean, that's you nailed it. I mean, I talk about how these different thinkers project authority, because traditionally in Islam, authority is something you earn through studying with the great scholars. If you want to become an alim, or if a Sufi authority comes through kind of both knowledge of the tradition and a sort of charisma,
spiritual charisma. Yeah.
But how do these new spokespersons who don't have that kind of background, how do they project authority? Yeah, for Deedat, it was certainly just knowing the mastery of this combative debate style, and he defended himself by saying, we Muslims are in a life and death situation, and desperate times calls for desperate measures, and I'm fully justified in taking a very combative, aggressive approach to those who are taking a combative and aggressive approach with us, he would say. Naik picks up some of that, but you're right. He adapts his own style of, I'm a walking computer. You often hear people say that Naik has memorized the whole Bible, or Naik has memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita or the Vedas, which of course is not true. He tends to return to the same passages that he's memorized over and over again, but he can cite them with such quickness and such convincing clarity that you almost think that he's memorized the whole Bible, and he can use the Bible, sort of against the Christian arguments, or he can use the Vedas to prove that Hindus really properly understood should become Muslim. And he cites Quran and Hadith chapter and verse in Arabic, and people sort of make fun of his Arabic pronunciation, but he does it in Arabic, and then he'll quickly switch to the English translation, and his audiences are just like, wow, this is amazing. He's like, he memorized the whole Quran, he knows all the Hadith. Again, in my own work, I've discovered he tends to circle back to a lot of the same things, but I do want to give him all the credit in the world. He does have a tremendous amount stored up that he's able to call upon at a moment's notice in these public settings, in these public lectures he gives, in public Q&A sessions. Deedat was always really careful to not claim to be a member of the ulama. He was like, here's who I am. I'm a scholar of comparative religion. And he used that term to sort of create a niche for himself.
Yeah, and it also presents himself as a neutral observer who, through scientific method, has discovered that Islam is the truth, and other
competing. And Naik does that too. Naik says comparative religion is my thing, but Naik also, I would say, flirts with functioning as a mufti. I mean, he has these Q&A sessions, and he gives these sort of quasi fatwas. He has a whole series on how to properly perform the Ramadan fast.
Okay.
Like, so he does pronounce
Okay.
on the correct practice of
It's kind of
Islam.
like next level, like
Oh yeah,
almost as though he wants to gather community or disciples among around himself. Or
exactly, exactly.
maybe before we finish up here, just to propel ourselves into the current moment, because I mean, as you mentioned earlier in our chat, I mean, it's not that Zakir Naik is off the scene entirely. Maybe you could comment on that. I think he actually went to the World Cup in, was it 2023? Is that when the World Cup took place?
Yeah,
Was it
Qatar, yeah.
2022? I'm getting confused. I think it was 2022 in Qatar, in the winter. Anyway, whatever, doesn't matter. So
We all
he's
know what
not
you're
off the
talking
scene
about.
entirely. But I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that's going on in the world of dawah, especially not only, but especially on social media, which, so that can be TikTok or Twitter or whatever. Facebook in many Muslim majority countries is still very important. Then there are other social medias, Telegram, I think, in Iran and others. But I mean, there are folks doing dawah in all sorts of new ways. I see on Twitter a lot of sort of short videos of someone taking shahada, so sort of quick video of someone who's becoming a Muslim as a way of saying, oh, maybe you should become a Muslim too. So that's a form of dawah. And then you have in the Western context different figures, some who have converted to Islam, like Andrew Tate, who then integrate religion, sort of different sorts of dawah into their messaging. But it's still, I mean, in Andrew Tate's case, there's still sort of his like psychological, how to be a successful and powerful person kind of messaging still going on.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, anything about like the most recent dawah marketplace? How have things changed recently?
Yeah, I think you're pointing to some of the key dynamics, which is I would just say an intensification of trends that began back in the 19th century, the colonial period, with new technologies being available, with this sort of I keep using the word democratization of the empowering of ordinary Muslims, non-madrasa trained, non-ulama Muslims to enter the field. That has only been intensified now with social media. And I should mention here that someone like Zakir Naik is not universally loved by Muslims. The ulama in particular have a very sort of you might say ambiguous sense. Like many ulama are like, go Ahmed Deedat, go Zakir Naik, you're doing a great job defending Islam. But there's also this sense of, yeah, but you're not properly trained. You didn't go to the proper schools. You don't really know the Quran and the tradition that well. So much so that a school like Deoband in India has actually issued fatwas telling their followers, don't listen to Zakir Naik. Okay? So I just want to make it clear, like, we're not talking universal popularity.
Yeah, that's an important thing.
This illustrates again, like, how internally competitive the field of dawah is, and how there's often a double-edged sword to it in the sort of allowing the ordinary Muslim to sort of enter the field through TikTok, through social media, to allow an Andrew Tate to become a spokesperson for Islam. Really, many Muslims are profoundly uncomfortable with that. And many.
But
Muslims,
I've seen lots of Muslims on my Twitter who just love this guy.
Sure,
they're just like, they sort of push back and they're like, he's a Muslim now, like.
Yeah. There's that ambiguity of, on the one hand, you want to see your religion championed. You want to see your religion made looking good, so to speak.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's this kind of sense of, yeah, but is that person really the best kind of spokesperson?
Right.
So it's just such a mixed bag right now.
Yeah.